going to be talking about we're going to be talking about managing emotions in teams. So how do you deal with thoughtfully with people's emotions? So imagine if you walk by your teammate's office and she's emanating stress. Do you say something? If you do, like, what do you say? And so these are kind of the questions that have actually been looked at in some of the research. So I'm going to just start by mentioning a couple misconceptions about emotions at work, and then we'll get into the kind of a couple strategies that you can use. So the first misconception is discussing emotions at work is unprofessional. So many leaders may believe this, that it would just escalate tensions or maybe just distract employees from doing their jobs. So they may believe that emotions should be just suppressed on the job. But it turns out that there's some benefits of engaging with the emotions of others. Emotions are bridges that actually connect people. And so some of the empirical work has shown that sharing emotions builds trust. It conveys this willingness to invest in a person when you check in with them about how they're feeling. It demonstrates that they're not alone and you're kind of looking out for them. And then straight out increase team performance in some of the empirical work that's been done. So just acknowledging emotions can be very powerful. Just saying, I understand that you might be worried about this deadline or you seem to be a bit down. Those can have very powerful effects. Another misconception is that people who share their emotions want you just to solve their problems. And this can be an impediment because you may not know how to address the issue. And so then you just sort of ignore it or, pretend it just goes away without you having to address it directly. And leaders are oftentimes expected to fix things, at work. So they may just assume that your job is also to just tackle these problems when you see an employee in distress. As it turns out, though, many times employees and team members, they want to be heard and understood. And so sometimes that alone is enough, and that's all that they want. So acknowledging that we're human beings with emotions, I can understand how you can feel that. That can be very powerful. And so even if you do end up giving suggestions and having ideas and strategies for how to fix the problem, it's best to start with listening and hearing and understanding, seeking to empathize with people's emotions. So it turns out that there was this review, actually just this year, 2024, a review of 220 studies on the effects of how people respond to others' emotions at work. So there's a body of literature that addresses this, and they showed that there was very clear evidence that what leaders say or do when they see employees upset or stressed out or frustrated, they can have enormous consequences. It matters. It absolutely matters. So then what do we do about it? So what are some of the strategies that would be suggested for how to acknowledge, how to manage emotions in teams? Let me give you a couple points. One is just like many times we're concerned about overstepping boundaries, especially if we don't necessarily know the person that well, or maybe an atmosphere of safety hasn't really been developed a whole lot. So sometimes just trying to take a direct approach, like, you look angry, or you look stressed out, might not be the appropriate response, especially since the person may not be angry and you're actually saying, I think you're angry, might make them more angry and more, they may say, I'm more frustrated, or they may take it wrong in terms of like, you don't really know me enough to even be able to diagnose what my emotions are. So one of the approaches that is a bit safer is to acknowledge the situation rather than the emotion directly. Like, that was a rough meeting, or, it seemed like things were kind of getting tense in there, so that you speak to the situation rather than the emotion directly. And then that may be the catalyst for somebody to actually then share how they're actually feeling about it, or sometimes you can go ahead from there and share how you're feeling about it, and that may draw someone else out. The other way, again, is instead of saying you look angry or you seem to be upset, is ask questions rather than just assume. So, what did you think about that meeting? Or, are you doing okay? And checking in with people. If you want to address individual emotions, then it certainly makes sense to do that individually rather than in front of other team members. Another strategy that I've used that's I found very effective in helping team members to notice and share emotions is starting a meeting by asking members to share one word that expresses how they're feeling. And then one sentence to elaborate on that word. Now, obviously, this can't be done if it's a huge meeting, but if you have, a few people, then you can just kind of go around and have each person just share very briefly about that. It doesn't, this is not just sharing your life story kind of thing, but it's just one word and one sentence. And if I'm leading the meeting, I often start by sharing more of a negative emotion, like, I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling pretty frustrated these days. And especially at a stressful time, like we're in a stressful time of the semester, or after if you have a big deliverable and people are really kind of overwhelmed, it's kind of a nice way to start the meeting, because noticing and naming emotions helps to diffuse them. There's empirical work on this. Just naming your emotion. Oh yes, I'm overwhelmed. Oh yes, I'm stressed out. It diffuses it, and it kind of gets it off the table so that members and ourselves can concentrate better during the meeting. And then it also has the effect of, when other members admit that they are overwhelmed or anxious, it helps others to know that they're not alone in that. So the main takeaway is you don't want to really ignore emotions. There's clear work on this where studies have actually contrasted talking about emotions versus ignoring them. And it's better to talk about them. It's better to acknowledge them. We are human beings, we are emotional beings. And there's so much going on in the world right now, politically, economically, environmentally, socially, professionally, personally. And so to create a culture where it's okay to talk about emotions, it's safe to say, I'm struggling right now. And again, it may be more indirect by acknowledging a difficult situation or asking the questions, but making sure that people are okay is the way to go in teams. It builds all these positive aspects that then contribute to productivity in the team. So thanks for your kind attention once again.